On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, we welcome Coach Bill Freidig into our Buck and Honey studios. Bill lost his father at the age of 11 and found mentors and coaches and adults to fill those roles. He will talk about his coping strategies that he has used to survive and thrive. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up? Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decora. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. You can follow this podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, the Big X at TDecora 8791, as well as hitting me up on Facebook at Tim Decora. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to the show. Leave us a comment if you liked what you heard. If there's a topic or you know a guest who would love to tell their story, leave a comment or email me at tdecora@gmail.com. Glad you could join us today wherever you happen to be. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you cry, laugh and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will be released on Monday and Thursday morning, featuring a wide range of guests. The podcast will touch on many subjects such as grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, divorce, success despite challenges, etc., etc., etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. Today, we have a special guest in studio. We welcome a good friend of mine, Coach Bill Freidig. We were also teammates back in the day playing for the men's basketball team at the University of Wisconsin, Platteville. Since then, Billy has been all over with his last 25 years spent at Alliant Energy here in Madison, Wisconsin as a health and human performance trainer. His love for coaching basketball has landed him at many places, such as Belleville, his hometown, Mount Horeb, Barneveld, and he was also on the AAU travel circuit as a coach. He's also found time to pick up certifications to be a coach in life impact, mindset performance, certified strength and conditioning coach, precision nutrition, and a health coach. And lastly, he is happily married to his wife, Carla, the proud father of 5, Mackenzie, Alexis, Mason, Haven, and Phoebe, and the happy grandpa of 7 amazing grandchildren. Welcome to the show, Billy. What is up?
Well, thanks for having me. This is a great thing you're doing, and I'm just glad to be part of this. And I don't know, having 5 kids and 7 grandkids, how old that makes me.
Yeah, I think if we do the math, I think you're a year older than me, and I'm gonna, I don't know if I'll attempt to catch up in the 5 children area. I've got 3, but 2 amazing grandchildren of my own, and I don't know if we'll catch up, but that's not my department. That's not my department. But tell us 2 things. So we before, when we were off air, we were trying to set this thing up, and I know you're involved in a lot of different things, but answer this question for me to get us rolling here. Tell us 2 things that have made you smile this weekend. Put you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's sometimes can be a tough question, but this one's pretty easy, I think. You know, with all our kids and our grandkids, we're very fortunate to have them all in the area, 15 minutes apart. You know, we live on the west side of Madison, and they're all within that 15-mile range. So they're always over. So this week, our youngest, Phoebe, stopped by. She's in an apprenticeship program, doing her own thing. But what made me smile this week was when she leaves now our house to go back to her apartment, she gives us each a hug. Oh. And she's never been a hugger.
Nice.
So I think, taking that next step, and that always, and we tell her that, you just put a smile on her face.
Yeah, not only is she a good hugger now, but she's also cutting hair too, I heard, right?
Yes, she is. Yeah, she's in an apprenticeship program doing well. Finding that next step in her life, which is pretty cool to watch. So that gives us a smile.
Yeah, we're kind of in the same boat. We moved from where I taught for 29 years, Wanakee. We moved over to the east side of Madison here and shaved off about half the drive to our grandkids. Now my two oldest live about 12 minutes away, the way the crow flies. And it's just led to a lot more interaction with them, as well as now with the grandkids. And I'm sure you're getting a call out of the bullpen to help out, babysit once in a while, like we are.
Every weekend. But that's a good thing. It's a different stage, different way, things that we're doing for the grandkids. But, it's making an impact on their lives, helping out our kids. And we tell them, see, it wasn't easy, right? And so, but we give back, and they're over. And that's the second thing that makes us smile is our daughter called us. She has a newborn, 5-month-old and a 3-month-old boy, or 3-year-old boy. And she wanted to go get her haircut by Phoebe and asked if they could stay with Grandpa for the afternoon. So when you're holding a 5-month-old baby and feeding them and feeling that, them fall asleep in your arms, that puts a smile on your face. So.
Kind of gets you back to when we first were parents, and you get that feeling back again after, 20, 25 years until your own children start having children of their own. And then, as you probably know, and I'm starting to get this now with my oldest grandson, who's about 19 months old, and come over and give Grandpa a hug. We're getting ready to go, and he comes over and gives you that, they have that unconditional love,
grip, right?
The little death grip, and I'm sure we'll have that with our granddaughter. But I was just stalking you on Facebook. Stalking you on Facebook and just checked out the last couple of posts on Facebook that you had. And one of them gave me the goosebumps a little bit because tomorrow in the state of Wisconsin and probably a lot of other states across the country, basketball starts with not only girls, but probably boys basketball starts. And I've always looked forward to that myself. But your nephew's son they were at the Hoosier Gym in Knightstown, Indiana, and they kind of did that. I'll let you talk. I'll shut my mouth and you can talk a little bit about that. What was it again? Set that up.
Yeah. So my nephew Taylor is a big basketball guy, coach, teacher, and his young son Jackson is in 6th grade. And Taylor is a big Notre Dame fan. Lives, breathes everything Notre Dame from the time he was young to, even now. So he took him to University of Notre Dame when they were back this past summer. They live in Arizona. And they spent a month up here, but part of their trip was to take Jackson to Notre Dame and experience that, and then make the trip to Knightsville, Indiana, to the Hoosier experience.
Yep.
So he sent me this video that I posted, and of them being down in the locker room, and you can see it, that scene building, right?
Yes.
They get all hyped up, and it's his first game, and he runs up the stairs, and takes a second, turns, says, "Welcome to Indiana basketball."
And they open the door, and
off it goes, right? So off the game.
Exactly. I mean, you just painted the whole picture and if any of our listeners or those of you that are watching have not seen the movie Hoosiers, it came out at an opportune time. I think it came out in November of '86, which you would have been off to your first semester at UW-Platteville. That was my fall of my senior year when that movie came out, and I always signify that same way, that it's the start of basketball season, and if you haven't watched it, you got to watch the movie. Those of you that haven't seen it before, Hoosiers. So one last item before we get to the promo of our sponsors. You're not going to be on the sidelines this season for the first time in a while, I think. So tell me, let's shoot for 90 seconds. Tell me what, so you're not going to be on the sideline. Set that up for the listeners here. What's going on?
head varsity coach at those schools, as Tim had mentioned, 17 years, a lot of great teams, a lot of great kids, and about 17 more as an assistant, somewhere around there, 30 plus years total. Mm-hmm. And this is the first year I decided to take a step back, and with our grandkids, our oldest 10-year-old is playing a lot of different things now. And as a coach, you're all in, but you miss those times. Yeah. Miss those pieces. So I just wanted to take a step back and just enjoy that and take a breather and impact kids' lives in a little different way. So I'm doing some coaching, training at a facility, Shoot 360 in Madison on the east side, that I get to go still impact kids' lives through the game of basketball, and still, keep me around the game. Yeah. So I don't lose it. Like, basketball wins that first game. Tomorrow may be hard for me, yes, because I've coached girls for the last amount of my years. And so I'm going to have to take some deep breaths tomorrow, I think. But it'll be good. Do a little breathing. Yes. Yeah. Get some things you can see in the room. Yeah. Yes. Some of the stuff so it doesn't come closing in on me. Right. Yes. So no, I do want to touch on something, because this will give you an opportunity to share that next step in your life. And we talked about it off air, that you had a job change that came kind of out of nowhere. And I think we're going to have you on again, the show, where you'll talk about that sudden change in career. I mean, real quick. So touch on that real quickly, but then also touch on some of the things you're thinking about doing. Yeah. So, I've been in my career for 25 years, and, all of a sudden this past week it changed. It was the company going a different direction, and, I'm closer and closer to retirement. So on Monday, I found out that I was part of the downsizing of the company, and it hit me all at once. I was working one day, same day I don't have that job. Mm-hmm. And then kind of the whirlwind of everything kind of hits. I've got Tuesday morning, I wake up, they send me all this paperwork and that I got to do all the legal stuff. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm just consumed in that. And I think Friday, it really hit me. Talk about things just overwhelming you at times. Friday was the day, this couple days ago, that it just kind of hit me, and I had to take a step back and just take a breather, knowing that everything's going to be okay. But so what I've transitioned to is I have to figure out what that next career is for me. Yep. My career is for 25 years is done. Now I'm on to that next. So I've been building a program which is called a health retirement strategy. Mm-hmm. And we had talked before here is, we build and build throughout our career to make it to retirement. Financially. Yes. And we're putting away at each paycheck, and we want to get to this dollar amount. When we get there, we go, yes, we made it. We made half of it. So what I've created is what's called a health retirement strategy to go along with that financial retirement strategy, where it builds a roadmap for you from a health perspective. Physically, what you need nutritionally, stability and balance, mobility, and even the mindset part. Mm-hmm. And that's what, when talking to my older brothers and sisters that have retired, I asked them, what's the most difficult thing about retiring? And they told me that it wasn't about the financial part, because they had to figure out. They said it was the mindset. Nobody prepared them to retire. Good point. So I've developed this program that just lays out the individual steps and roadmap to a health retirement strategy. So taking all those pieces, keeping it simple, but giving people, whether they're 30 and they want to retire at 60, we got a lot more years there, right, where we can put away those health deposits more frequently. But if I'm 52 and I would want to retire and I haven't started that strategy for my health, we still have some time. We just give you those tools to get you there. So when you get to retirement, I've got the financial piece, I've got the health piece, And now that might boost my length of my next career. Do I want a healthy 5 to 10 years, or do I want to increase my chances and get to 10, 20, 30 years of retirement?
Yeah, there's a couple things that you think of there is just your own situation of you've got 7 grandkids and you want to be around when they graduate and go to school and be a part of that whole thing. And you and I kind of have the background of being phy ed teachers and having that base of knowing what to do physically, get our strength and conditioning, get our cardio. We know that, but there's that segment of the world that maybe doesn't, and you're going to give them the tools. So is there a place, and I'll try to stick these in the in the description of the show here, but where can they look? Is there a website?
Yeah, I've got a website. It's www.team212training.com. Team212training.com.
Okay, yeah, we'll stick that in the bio, and I can probably also stick your email address if they feel a little more comfortable sending you an email, and you can start that
for
discussion.
Sure. Reach out, and I love talking health and well-being. So
health and wellness, you are the epitome of health and wellness, as well as surviving and thriving, which we'll find out here. So our sponsor, Buck and Honey's Restaurants, is making an impact in the communities where they live, just like you've done with your coaching in those different communities. Great food, 5-star customer service, welcoming, and a vibrant atmosphere are what has people coming back, with locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Wanakee, and Mount Horeb. There's always one close by. Have you been to Buck and Honey's yet?
I have to be honest, I told you, but I have not, but we are going to meet at one of them so I can experience it.
We will experience a Bomber's Pizza and some firecracker shrimp.
There we go.
Yes, the firecracker shrimp is great, as well as the Bomber's special pizzas. So we're going to start segment 1, and we're going to try to run this for about 7 to 10 minutes, because there's some stuff that I put in segment 1 that I think should actually go to segment 2. So the reason I reached out to you is you and I had a discussion probably a couple of months ago, and I don't know why I didn't ask this before, but I just didn't know. I knew you had your mom, Boots, who I knew from college, and your mom was affectionately called Boots, Levon Freidig, and I knew her from college. And then, of course, my wife worked up around the Capitol, and that's your mom was kind of in the governmental scene, and we ran into each other back in 95 or 96 when my wife started working up on the Capitol, and your mom shouted my name out, and we've been friends ever since then, up until her passing. Yeah. But I never knew what the story of was with your dad. I just knew that there wasn't one around in college, and I just finally asked you, and you told me that. So segment 1 is your dad passed away when you were 11 years old from cancer. And lots of young kids who have become adults that are listening to the show right now have lost parents at a young age, whether it's illness, an accident, divorce, or a parent just up and leaves, or they were never around. It unfortunately happens to kids. Being the youngest of 6, can you tell us what you remember about growing up in a big family? What do you remember about your family? And then I'll circle back and ask you what you remember about your dad.
Yeah, I was pretty fortunate. As Tim said, I was the youngest of 6, three boys, 3 girls. Growing up on a farm.
You were the baby.
I am, and my brothers and sisters will remind me of that. But we were so close, farm family, typical farm family, worked together, played together, did everything together. My mom and dad were very influential in making sure we all understood how important family was to us. So we're still as close as we were there. We're very fortunate. We're all living live in the Madison area.
Sure.
So we're able to continue that strong bond, getting together as frequently as we can. So yeah, just strong family. And I think that was, going through, as we'll talk about, was an important thing that we had to overcome the passing of our dad. And then, 3 years ago, my mom passed away. Lived a great life, 89 years old. And again, our family, the bond that we have, helps us through all those types of things, in good times and, the times that aren't so good. So
yeah, can you share? I know we talked about there's parts of this episode today that might bring a few tears. Hopefully not. Hopefully I can save you, or you can maybe save me. Maybe you can save me. But laughing, thinking. We talked about, was there something that you remember about your dad that maybe used to giggle, something that he did or laugh, or, was there something that you remember from your dad?
Yeah, my dad was a great athlete. So I think that's what got me involved in the athletic world. But when we were on the farm, I could never beat him, but he'd always have a race between my older brothers and him from the barn to the house. Now that was a pretty good sprint, and they could never beat him.
Really?
Yeah, he was just that quick, that fast. He wasn't a big guy, but just moved really smooth. So that was always one thing that I remember back of just that time, because then everybody be huffing and puffing when they get to the house, and he'd look back and go, still got it.
Still got it. I mean, I can probably, and you're probably the same way, that you can probably win most of the horse games against your kids. I can probably say this proudly, that I could probably outshoot all my kids, except for maybe my daughter.
Yeah.
But I know there's one thing that I will happily lose, and that would be a sprint, which is 180 degrees the other way. Your dad is still sprinting back in those days. Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, my connection with kind of you a little bit and made me think about was, for the first 8 to 9 years of my life, my dad wasn't involved because he didn't live with us. I knew who he was, but my grandpa, great uncle, aunts and uncles all filled in because they knew that my dad was absent. And when my dad finally moved in, I didn't get much guidance from him or fathering from him. He was physically there, but just not in the way that he probably shouldn't have been. And that really wasn't his fault. He was just a young dad when I was born. So I had to lean, like you did, on family. I had to lean on family, and then they also knew enough to be there. So, when your dad passed away, what was that like? This kind of leads into the second episode, but just give us a little bit of a teaser. What was that like for you when you found out that where were you at? Were you at home?
Yeah, so it was kind of a struggle the last couple of years. And for me being so young, trying to put it all together, I didn't really comprehend it at the time. As back then we had talked about that things weren't real open in discussion about things. Some things are, better off just, hey, we're just going to keep this quiet.
That code of silence I referenced, it was everywhere. The code of silence. We're not going to talk about certain things. And you were 11 years old, probably not seeing. I always say that about 11 or 12 years old is when you start to see the colors of the world. Otherwise, before that, everything is black and white. What's 2 plus 2? It's 4.
Yeah.
2 plus 2 when you're 12 or 13 years old might be something different. But we're going to allude to that, and that kind of leads us up to what we have coming up in segments 2. So during the last few years of your father's life, he was in and out of hospitals. Then in June of 1979, you would lose your father to what you would find out later was kidney cancer. You're going to share some of your memories of those last couple of years and the aftermath, and then how you learn to survive and thrive in segment 2. So those of you, again, that maybe are a little bit in the younger crowd that are listening, or you know somebody that maybe you've got a cousin or a relative of some kind, or a neighbor kid that that has lost a parent, tell them to listen to listen to episode 16 of Survive and Thrive 8791, because we've got Bill Freidig in studio today, and he's going to give you some things that you can do to survive and thrive, and he's going to share that with us. So stay tuned. We will be back shortly.
If you, a loved one, or someone you know who is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help or resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365, and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Crisis Services, dial 911. Suicide Prevention Lifeline, call 988. To connect via web chat, go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to utter 3 words: I need help. Now back to the show.
All right, we are back. Segment 2. We set that up a little bit at the end of segment 1. The segment 2 is called What Happened After June 1979. So, your dad would eventually pass from cancer, which we'll talk about what kind of cancer that was. Your dad was in and out of the hospital, going on at about 10 or 11 years old, the last few years of his life. What did that look like? Was he, you said in and out of the hospital, he was coming home. What did that look like?
Yeah, so it was just towards the end that, we had a bed in the living room, and this is kind of the visual that just I have. When he'd come home, he was at the point where we had to have that bed there because he couldn't make it up and downstairs. And I guess at that point, it was just surreal. Like, here's your dad. It's not that active guy that's sprinting or doing chores and milking cows. And at that point, I think it was more of me just trying to push off the inevitable, right? I don't see that he's sick. I understand he's sick, but I don't nobody's told me. My parents my mom and family really just kind of hid it from me because they wanted to protect me because I was the youngest. So I didn't know much of the details besides seeing him laying there and going back and forth to the hospital. The one part the end, when I found out that Dad had died, was they were at the hospital.
Okay.
I was at home. And, back then it's a landline. Not the cell phone.
Landline. We got to talk about that. Yeah, the phone rings on the wall.
Yeah, and you pick that up. And on the farm, we were on a party line. So if you don't know what that is, look up party line.
Party line, yeah.
So there's the dating you. But that was the call. And we took that. And our neighbor lady was watching us because they were at the hospital. And I just remember that time of her giving us the phone and my mom saying that Dad had passed away. And I think there's just that blank spot in my memory where I just cut it off because I don't even remember how I responded. I've thought many a day of what was that day? What besides that phone call? And I just can't, it's hard to explain. And I guess how did my dad die? And what was that day like to my family?
And back then, because of what I talked about earlier, that code of silence, that we don't talk about it, we don't share our feelings. So a lot of us that are in that late 40s to 50s to 60s and on up, we're used to suppressing because we don't talk about those things. And it's important that we do that. And it sounds like you've been able to open up those lines of communication with siblings, and even today, just sitting here talking about the lead up to the episode, you're talking about some things that I almost felt like saying, hey, we're not going to talk about it, because it's a kind of a go-to.
Yeah.
But I felt that, there was just I could feel a little bit of a load being lifted off your shoulders, and we just took a couple of plates off the squat rack and we set them down on the ground, and I could almost feel that out of you just when we were doing the lead up to this. So you find out about your dad passing from a phone call on a landline, party line, and your parents, your mom, and maybe your dad said, hey, you need to keep Billy strong, and don't tell him everything. Just, there's going to be a time and place for that. It's just not right now as an 11-year-old. So they were trying to keep you safe by not doing that. Your mom then, Levon Boots Freidig, now plays a larger impact in your life, because she's got to be not only the mom of the family, but she's also got to probably, play some of the dad role, plus the breadwinner. Tell us a little bit about your mom.
Well, my mom, more people probably say this, but my mom was our rock. She was like, at her funeral, I described her as the lighthouse. She was always on, yes, and giving of her, even when she didn't have things to give for us kids and her grandkids. So she was that lighthouse, and I utilize in my talks lighthouse, be the lighthouse, because they're there to serve, right? They have one purpose, to serve. And that's what my mom was.
Show everybody where to go and point to, this is a safe place, and the lighthouse. And I like that.
And I think the lighthouse, the light that she shines still to this day, is that she protected me and us from the grief, the agony, and she was guiding us away from that. And ultimately, it made it a little bit more difficult as time wore on for me personally, just because she was guiding us down the way, and in trying to just make our lives as best we can, in a tough situation. Because if you remember, we lived on a farm, so she was trying to make the farm go. And that's where she ended up, selling the farm, and we moved into town, a couple of years later. But that's where she got her job at the Capitol. And where she worked the rest of her career. But you couldn't tell how much she had going on, because she was just so concerned about us and making sure we were okay and guiding us. So, and I get a lot of that from my mom, as far as the impact that I just look back and, man, she was impactful in my life. But I think there's certain parts that, if my mom could have just communicated, certain things, and that's what I've learned, is I've had to become better at what's inside my mind. And if it's going to make a difference, I've got to speak. I've got to communicate to those around me. And it's been in the last probably 10 years that I've actually kind of got better at that. Like, for me to be here today and talking about this is, I appreciate what you're doing, Tim, because this is helping, hopefully helping those people listening. But also from my perspective, it's very helpful because I get to tell a story that I haven't been able to tell and to help people. And the biggest lesson that I've learned through this, and my mom guided me there as a lighthouse, is speak and communicate. And if there's something going on inside, reach out for help. Because I didn't have the tools or anybody to say, Bill, just speak, just talk. Let's walk through this. And I had to learn a lot of that on my own. Like this week, when things change, it's a lot of swirling. I went back to 11, 12-year-old Bill for a couple days this week because it was like, but because I have some of those skills now, I was able to trigger and transition to, okay, what's next? And we need to talk about this. And my wife's been my lighthouse through this. And I think my mom transferred the light to my wife, and she's helping guide me and having those conversations that I probably would just stuff inside if I didn't have learned from this situation and have somebody else in my life that can help pull those and ask the right questions.
Yeah, I think we're on that. We're in that transition now from we don't talk about our feelings, we don't talk about what's going on, to now in our late 40s and 50s, closing in on the 60s, that we're starting to communicate, and it's better late than never. And we can be the lighthouse, and you know what? And we can say it's better to communicate late than to never. And maybe that's tacks on a few years to our lives that we can spend with our grandkids and with our siblings and with our wives, that we'll be around a little bit longer because we can start to talk about some of those things that used to bother us, that we used to suppress. Man, you just said a lot of really good things there. What I do want to talk about is, since your dad passed, you sold the farm, you moved into town. I, like you, had mentors in our lives, coaches, teachers, men or women that filled the gap of missing parents, missing siblings, whatever it was. And you had 4 of them. You had John Morgan, gentleman by the name of John Morgan in the youth. You had Gene Wick and John Becker at the high school, and then you had Coach Bill Ryan in college. Can you touch on just, I'd say 60 seconds on each of those guys? So John Morgan, how did he play?
Yeah, he was the first man in my life, besides my brothers, that cared and took me under his wing. He was just a basketball coach, a baseball coach, and he probably wouldn't have even called himself a coach. He was the true definition of what a coach is. He invested time and he cared about us. And he would take us to a tournament here. He would take us for ice cream here. He would open up the gym. He would carry the bats and balls in his trunk, and we'd just have to call him. And he just took me under his wing, knowing the situation that I was in.
I would say in small towns, Belleville, maybe a couple thousand back then. Everybody knows what everybody's going through. And he probably knew that he had to step in.
Yeah, and he was the first. And boy, I don't know from a coaching standpoint, if he weren't there, how things would have changed.
Okay, now we talked about Gene Wick and John Becker.
Yeah, so Coach Wick was my high school basketball coach. The head guy. Yep. Been there, math teacher, and the basketball coach. And he just, when I got to high school, made basketball important for me. He invested in me, and made me realize, you can utilize the game to do different things. And kind of spread your wings a little bit farther. He really gave me the tools that started to build my confidence that I didn't have as growing up. And I attribute it to, I just didn't have anybody giving me that feedback, like, you can do that. Oh, you're skilled at this, or just giving me that positive feedback to build that confidence. So he was one of the first when I got to high school and just, impacted my life, just giving me that boost of confidence.
Well, I think parents back then we don't talk about things, and then maybe we also don't pat our kids on the back, and that they should, they automatically know that they care, they love us, but maybe they weren't good at saying, hey, you're doing a great job, keep doing what you're doing. So that was probably hard for them as well.
Yeah. And John Becker was my football coach, longtime teacher and coach there. And again, basically the same as Coach Wick, was just that Coach Becker was the hard-nosed football coach, but cared, right? Our coaches. And,
yep.
I was quarterback, and, he expected a lot, but he gave me more of those leadership tools and continued to help develop those things over the course of my football career. And so those two in the high school started to just kind of mold me. And I think it's because they understood that they needed to help in that way for me to be successful. They went above and beyond what they really needed to do.
I just had another aha moment here, because I thought I was the only quarterback that Coach Bo Ryan recruited. I thought I might have been the first quarterback, and not the only, because we've heard about some of the guys he's recruited that were quarterbacks. And now I'm here to say that I may have been the second guy.
I think you were the third guy, because
was it
Andy Benasic?
Oh, that's right, Benasic. Yes,
title football quarterback.
Yes,
so I was 2. You were 3.
I'll gladly take third in that long line.
But I defer to you two as far as the quality of the quarterback.
So that leads us into then Coach Bill Ryan. He probably took the baton from those two guys and then kind of ran with it. And Coach Ryan loves his point guards. I know that, not from, and seeing that from the outset, because I was more of a 2-guard, but he put a lot of time into you and got a lot out of it, because you were very productive and the quarterback on the basketball court.
Yeah. And, we all know, Coach, when you're going through it with Coach, it's tough.
Yes.
It is hard. Seeing the end result when you're going through it, it's like, man, another hill, he expects this, but he's teaching you every step of the way. And as a point guard, there's a little bit different spin on what he's teaching you, because he's expecting you to be him on the floor, and he's holding you account. Not that he didn't hold anybody else, obviously, but there is just that little bit of that quarterbackness. And but he brought things out of me that I never even thought about that I had inside me. That confidence level from when I walked in as a freshman, it's overwhelming. And I come from a small school, and finding my way, and the expectations, I just never had that type of next level coaching like he brought it. The intensity, the expectations of this is why, and this is step 1, 2, 3. We don't skip step 2. We go 1, 2, 3, and there's a reason. Coach Ryan is the master at having that goal and having those processes and systems in place to reach the ultimate goal. And that's what I take away from Coach, and why he was so important in my life, is he truly became that father figure for me in a really important part of my life, those 4 years. And he taught me that definition of coach, he care plus time. He cared about every single one of us, and he invested so much time in us not for the results during those 4 years. Obviously, we were pretty successful.
Yes.
But it's the success that we've all created afterwards, right? And that's the impact and what he's meant to me, just from what the void he filled without having a dad. And I know there's people in my situation, your situation, and all different types of situations, but if you don't have somebody in your life like that, seek that out.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they fall into your lap. And I was very fortunate with these four men because I didn't have that father figure, and these guys filled it. But if you're struggling, or you know a kid is struggling, can you be their coach?
Mm-hmm.
Or look to help guide them to that coach? Not the athletic coach, but just the coach.
I think if you look at as a young guy, and maybe, again, you might have lucked into it, or I have always known you as a very intelligent guy that maybe you just looked at, okay, I got a mom, my dad passed away, I need somebody to fill that role. And there's a lot of people that grow up as an 11-year-old, even younger, a little bit older, that have something happen, and there's now parents taking out. How do you fill that in? How do you complete that equation? And you were able to do that with people, so that with your mentors and coaches, and then once you got out of college and became a parent and became a professional, you could lead a successful life. You could survive until you were 22 or 23 years old, and then thrive. What an episode. You shared a tough, life-changing experience as a young guy, 11 years old. And I look back on that, and no 11-year-old should have to go through what you did. But you epitomized the survive and thrive mentality. It wasn't easy as a young guy, but you survived and have thrived. You had a stellar high school academic and athletic career that would lead to the same in college. A degree in Phi Ed and health, and being a contributor and starter for the 2 conference champions in your time at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. You've been an awesome husband, father, grandfather, successful health and wellness professional, and certainly head coach and assistant coach. So, call to action, we do this at the end of each episode, is if you lose a loved one, especially a parent. Billy just shared with you 3 things, but I think you shared more than 3 things that our listeners can learn from. These 3 to 5 things can help you survive and thrive if you experience what Coach Freidig did and went through. You relied on your family. You found some mentors that could fill in, and certainly you found some passions. That was athletics, football, basketball, and baseball. Is there anything you would like to, as we close this episode, is there anything you would like to share, add on, tack on, going for that last layup?
No, I just want to say thanks, Tim, for the Survive and Thrive podcast. I think you're doing amazing things, giving opportunities to people to talk, to share their messages. And the most important thing you're doing is impacting people's lives. And I want to challenge people, as Tim is, the call to action is, how many lives can you impact in the next 30 days, in the next 6 months, in the next year? Because if we all move forward with that same goal of impacting lives, if Tim, right now, you just lit a light, right? You're the candle, the light, that lighthouse. Now, if you can do that to 2 other people, and they can take it on and impact 2 more people, think about how bright our lights will shine. And that's my message, is everybody has special tools inside them, and we're all coaches. Careless time, invest in somebody, talk to people, and know that we just don't know what is going on in that individual's lives during that day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I've always coached. is so I can help those kids and everybody here. Parents, you're a coach. Teachers, you're coaches. I'm a coach, you're a coach. It's just, if we all called ourselves coaches, think about the world and how many lives we could impact that way.
That's a good end of this episode. You hit on some really, really good things there, and that, the call to action is say something, do something, give back, be that light for somebody, hold the door for somebody going in and out of the building, say hello, ask them how they're doing, give them a smile, knuckles or whatever. So that is really some really good stuff. So on our next episode, we will have another amazing guest who will share how they survived and thrived. So until next time, hang in there with whatever you're going through, and with hard work, dedication, determination, you can survive and thrive as well. So until next time, we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.